Hello and welcome back to Matt Hayes' Tottenham blog. Today I'm going to be reviewing Tottenham's 2-1 defeat to Leicester in the Premier League yesterday. But before I get into that, if you are new to the channel, I do various interactive live streams, match previews, reviews and breaking news videos. So if you want to get some more of that content, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below and click that notification bell. So getting straight into things, there's not really too much to say about why we lost that game. You can look into why we're throwing away so many leads throughout the season so far. Obviously the games against Arsenal and Olympiacos spring to mind straight away, but that game was completely ruined by a ridiculous, insane VAR decision that absolutely should not have been made. And I mean, to be fair, our performance, it wasn't the best performance in the world. Like, it wasn't a performance that you would have looked at and thought, yeah, they definitely deserve to go out and win that game. It was a massive improvement on the game against Olympiacos on Wednesday, which obviously wasn't too hard. We were really poor out in Greece. But I suppose going from the very start, I was happy with the lineup. I think it was only one player off from my kind of ideal lineup or lineup prediction from last week. The only one being Hugo Lloris wasn't in the team. Of course, he was at the birth of his son. It was Paulo Gazzaniga who played instead of him. It was brilliant to see that the four at the back that we saw against Crystal Palace returning: Aurier, Vertonghen, Alderweireld and Danny Rose. I did say in my preview as well that I would like to have seen that three in midfield of Winks and Ndombele and Sissoko to add a bit of solidity that we were missing, mainly in that game against Olympiacos on Wednesday. And it didn't work as well as it might have done. Like, the midfield, it was a really good battle in there, and at times Leicester were winning it, at times we were. But and then with, of course, Lamela and Son playing with Harry Kane, I was really happy with that lineup, and I was a bit more optimistic when I saw that than what I was in the couple of days leading up to the game. And we started pretty well, to be fair. The first maybe 10 or 15 minutes, we had a couple of chances. I think Kane and Son both came close, and we were causing Leicester problems. And for the first maybe 5 minutes, they could not get out of their half, and it was shaping up to be a really good game. And unfortunately, they did manage to kind of wrestle back control of the game a bit. James Maddison, who was absolutely exceptional yesterday, no matter what you want to say about the game as a whole, Maddison was a really, really good performer in that one. He came close a couple of times, and then I think the moment that kind of set up the game for what we were in for was that disallowed goal for Leicester. And there's no doubt it was the correct decision. Of course, the corner came in, it was headed out to Yuri Tielemans. He took a touch and hit it. And Gazzaniga, who's been very solid, a very good deputy for Hugo Lloris over the last year, 18 months, had a bit of an awkward moment. It's not something we see often from him in competitive games. He was very dodgy in pre-season, but it's the first time we've really seen it in a game that matters, where he spilled that shot. You can see he tried to hold on to it, but he spilled it straight out to Jose Perez, and a bit of a goalmouth scramble ensued, and eventually Wilfred Ndidi put the ball in the back of the net. And from first viewing, there didn't look to be anything wrong with it, because when Tielemans took the shot, at the moment he took it, Perez was coming backwards, but the defence were going backwards as well, so they crossed over pretty quickly. And I don't think you can criticise the linesman for not spotting that, but that right there is why VAR is in the Premier League. That was the perfect way to use it. They had a quick look from the camera that was kind of in line with the defence, and I could see from first viewing Jose Perez was 2 yards offside. It was a perfect decision. The fans in the stadium weren't happy. Obviously they didn't see the angle that we saw, but you could see straight away it was the right decision. That goal should have been disallowed. And then the game kind of balanced out a bit after we had our spell, they had their spell. It was a bit more even after that. And then the goal from Harry Kane, it was a really, really good finish, a very kind of clever goal, and one that you'd expect from a world-class striker like him. It was a good play from us down the right. He got the ball into Son, and it was great awareness from Son. Kind of, you could see the chemistry between him and Kane as he kind of just flicked that ball back to Harry Kane. And as he took his first touch, he was shoved by Kaglar Soyuncu. And for a player who apparently dives all the time, I think he did pretty well to try and stay on his feet. And when he got to the ground, he just kicked the ball into the ground and it looped up into the top corner. Great improvisation. It was a really good finish. And, you know, it was shaping up to be a pretty good afternoon for us. I mean, obviously a massive stroke of luck with that goal, because, you know, obviously he's on the ground when he's kicked it. Fair enough, it was quality from him, but there's a big element of luck about it as well. And there wasn't much to shout about for the rest of that first half. And then going into the second half, I think we started the better team in the second half. We had a couple of chances. I think Leicester had one or two as well, but neither keeper was too busy. And then came the massive moment that absolutely ridiculous changed the game. And for me, I've looked at it a lot, the obviously picture that we've all seen of the dotted lines coming down from, I think it was Johnny Evans' knee and Heung-min Son's shoulder. And for me, I can think of three reasons why that goal should have been allowed to stand. The first one is the blatantly obvious: he was onside. when you're level with the defender, that's onside. You're not behind the defender, so you can't be offside. And before VAR, when you've had these instances where it's like a couple of millimetres, a couple of inches, the benefit of doubt is given to the striker, and that is written in the offside rule. The benefit of doubt has to be given to the attacker. In that moment, it wasn't. Heung-min Son should have been ruled onside, as he was by the linesman in the play, but somehow VAR decided that from that hair's breadth of a distance from his shoulder to Johnny Evans' knee, they felt the need to overturn the decision to let that goal stand. And I mean, I can sit here for 2, 3, 4 hours talking, and I can't explain how ridiculous that decision was. The second reason why I think that should have stood is because when Son gets that ball, he's dribbling down in between the two defenders, and it's Kagler-Söyüncü, I think, who comes over and tackles him, and then the ball comes to Harry Kane, and then he crosses it all the way to the other side of the box. Aurier takes a touch, shoots, it deflects, and it's in the back of the net. Surely that space of time from when Son is tackled, surely that kind of starts the next phase of play, which is something that VAR have used to kind of explain a lot of their decisions in the past. They can't overturn a decision because of an infringement in a previous phase of play. And as much as I hate Chelsea, they had a very similar decision today, just in their game against Liverpool. Mason Mount was ruled offside for what would have been their equaliser in that game. And it was a good 15-20 seconds before that goal, and there was tackles, there was deflections, there was passes, crosses, absolutely everything. If it's a separate phase of play, VAR can't intervene, because it's essentially, I think the phrase they used to explain that recently was the defence have been given time to reset. And I think when that tackle comes in from Kagler-Söyüncü, the ball is put out wide, the defence has time to get back in as Harry Kane takes his touch and then crosses the ball. So I think it was a different phase of play, and that's the second reason why that goal should have stood. And the third reason is VAR should not intervene in that situation, because as is written in the VAR rules, and what is one of the key elements of why VAR should be working, is they shouldn't intervene unless the referee has made a clear and obvious error. And even if you want to argue that factually he was offside because his shoulder was a millimetre past Evans' knee, that was not clear and obvious. If the people sitting in that VAR studio have to spend, I think it was almost 3 minutes, drawing lines down from all their different parts of the body, drawing lines across the pitch and zooming in on that little tiny distance between the red and blue line, if they have to do that, it is not clear and obvious. And there's no other way of looking at it. If it was clear and obvious, as Jose Perez's one in the first half was, they should get one angle looking at it side on, and if they can see that he was in an offside position, it's clear and obvious, overturn the referee's decision. But the fact that they can decide in various different situations, like you can talk about Harry Kane's potential penalty against Newcastle and Dele Alli's against Arsenal, but looking at more obvious decisions, the one that Bournemouth should have had for Cedric Soares' tackle on Friday. Liverpool should have had one. Matip was taken down in the box in their game, I think it was against Newcastle last weekend. There have been so many different decisions, mainly penalty decisions, that VAR have looked at and thought it wasn't obvious enough to overturn the referee's decision, because they don't want to undermine the referee unless it has been a clear error. I don't understand how they can then look at this phase of play and decide that the linesman has made a clear and obvious mistake by not putting his flag up to rule Heung-min Son offside. So I think there is three very, I wouldn't say very obvious, but I think good arguments as to why that goal should have stood. And a fourth one, which I've heard, but I'm not too kind of convinced by it, is that the video the VAR referee, I think was it Andre Mariner or Chris Kavanagh, whoever it was watching in Stockley Park, was something like 50 frames per second. And when you're using that kind of video, per frame, a player moving as fast as they do can move from 10 to 13 centimetres on average in between each of those frames. So if he went one frame backwards, all of a sudden Son is clearly onside. And it's hard to decide when you should pause the video. Is it when the player, it was Ndombele who passed the ball, is it when he first makes contact with the ball, or is it when he leaves his foot? And how can you be precise enough to say this is the exact moment it's left his foot? Son is 3 centimetres offside in this moment. It's not definitive, and that's what VAR should be, unless they can look at it and say without any shadow of doubt that the referee or the linesman in this instance has made a clear and obvious error. They were guessing. This decision yesterday, they were guessing, and that's just the way it is. I mean, I can't even get my head around it, how they decided that was sufficient enough of an error for them to overturn that decision. And I'm still kind of in shock as to how they could decide that. But look, that was done. We still had a 1-0 lead at that stage, and it's just happened again that we have thrown away another lead, and it's getting really, really, really worrying now that this is happening so consistently. And it's we haven't won an away Premier League game since January, and we've had a lot of tough games in that spell. Don't get me wrong, we've had Arsenal and City already this season. We had City, Liverpool, Chelsea, and I think Arsenal away towards since January in the tail end of last season. But we've also had games against Bournemouth, Burnley, Southampton, and obviously Leicester. It's very worrying that the mentality doesn't seem to be there. And I said it after the Newcastle game. That run to the Champions League final last season kind of covered over the cracks that were showing in the Premier League. Because we had a dismal run towards the end of last season. And now in our last, it's either 17 or 18 Premier League games, we've picked up 19 points. And that's relegation form. I mean, you carry that kind of ratio over a season, you get relegated. And it's really, really worrying. And no matter what Pochettino seems to do in terms of tailoring his team, changing the formation, whatever it is, it just doesn't seem to be working. And I was really happy to see yesterday that he did have the guts to drop Christian Eriksen and Dele Alli, because I kind of felt as though he would throw them in and let them play in the game to kind of quickly fix the errors that they did make in that performance on Wednesday. But obviously Dele Alli didn't travel. I imagine that is down to his really poor performances going back maybe 2 years now, and Christian Eriksen was on the bench. He did come on later on, and then of course Leicester, when they got that equaliser, straight away the momentum of the game changed. We did have a few chances. Harry Kane hit one straight at Kasper Schmeichel, and there were a few moments where it looked like we might create something, but I think from that moment Leicester always looked the more likely to go on and win the game because they had the momentum. And all of a sudden the fans were really psyched up. They were completely behind their team. I think just kind of the joy of seeing a goal so ridiculously overturned. Pochettino made a few subs. Christian Eriksen came on and Victor Wanyama came on. And I see a lot of people getting kind of confused as to why Wanyama was brought on. First of all, why I think it was Ndombele came off for him, why he came off, but why Wanyama came on instead of Eric Dyer. And a journalist posed a question to Mauricio Pochettino saying, what has changed from when he said there's no place for Wanyama in the team to now when he's bringing Wanyama on in a really important part of a big game. And Pochettino said he never made that comment. I'm not too sure if he did, but people are quite annoyed that Wanyama was chosen over Dyer. Personally, I would agree with that decision. I would agree that Wanyama is the better player to come on in the way the game was turning. I'd think Wanyama would be a better player to sit in the middle of the park and kind of grasp control of the game back and start mainly stopping Leicester attacks and kind of breaking up their play rather than being more on the creative side of things. So I did agree with that decision to bring Wanyama on instead of Dyer, but when he did come on, he wasn't good enough. In hindsight, obviously you can say maybe Dyer should have come on, but in that moment I think Wanyama was the better player to come on. And then, I mean, James Maddison's goal to win it was a great finish, a great strike from distance, but how a player of his ability, the creative spark that he does have, the ability that he has on the ball, how he can find that much space in that part of the pitch, how he can afford that to him in the way that he even started that game. He was absolutely amazing. It was a terrible error to afford him that space, and we were punished. And it's just been the story of our Premier League season for quite a while now. And I mean, it just feels like we're going to be here every other week saying the same thing, saying we've thrown away another lead. The mentality isn't there, the character isn't there. And to be honest, for me, the thing that made this the kind of added insult to injury after the game was the amount of people that seemed to use this kind of performance, this kind of result, to say that Pochettino needs to be sacked. And anyone who thinks Pochettino deserves to be sacked, they themselves do not deserve to be able to call themselves a Tottenham Hotspur fan. Because what Mauricio Pochettino has done is he has brought us from a side that was essentially Tim Sherwood's leftovers. That's what we were when he came in. I know Sherwood didn't have too much of an impact on the squad. It was Villas-Boas mainly. But that was Tim Sherwood's leftovers. And he has managed to turn that in 6 years, in 5 years even, with a minimal budget, with a Daniel Levy budget. He's managed to change that into a team looking to make it to back-to-back Champions League finals. And if you as a fan can't see how miraculous, I suppose would be the best word to describe it, how miraculous that is, I just don't think there's any reason to even try and have a discussion about it, because it's quite simple. he has saved this club. If you look at where we were when he took over and where we are now, it's almost like a different club. And I know at the moment it feels like we're stagnating or even going backwards a bit. But even if we do go backwards a bit, we're still miles ahead of where we were when he took over. And if he now, as he kind of did in the window, has got the financial backing of Daniel Levy, there's absolutely no telling what he can achieve with this squad. This is, obviously, as he said himself, the toughest part of his time at Tottenham Hotspur. I don't think this is kind of the decisive moment for him, but if he can turn this around quickly, that should prove beyond any doubt to anybody that he is the man to take this football club forward. I fully 100% believe he is, but I think the players now need to, not to get back on his side, because it doesn't seem as though there's any kind of disruption in the dressing room or anything like that, but the players now need to perform on the pitch to kind of remind us of why we fell in love with Pochettino's team in the first place in that 2016-17 season, where under Pochettino, that is where we peaked. They need to remind us of the football that we played there, and again, why we fell in love with this Pochettino team. It is down to the players at this stage, because there's only so much the manager can do. The players need to get back that mentality and that character of being able to grind out the 1-0 wins when they need to be, when we need to get them, but also those 4-0 wins that we saw against Palace last week. They need to be able to do every kind of win that you could possibly want. And game management seems to be our biggest problem at the moment, which was really good in the last couple of seasons. But there's no denying there are problems at the moment that do need to be addressed. But I do not for 1 second think any of them are down to the manager. You can say there are different individual moments where he's made maybe poor decisions with the starting 11 or poor decisions with subs, but you can't look at any of these big problems, these recurring problems, and say it's his fault, because he's turned this club around from a team, say, yeah, look, we'll take 6th, to, as I said, Champions League finalists. So Pochettino absolutely does not need to be sacked. And those people say Mourinho in, I'm not even going to say anything about that. It's just the stupidest, most stupid opinion you could ever come up with. A manager who comes in, wins a couple of trophies for a season and ruins the dressing room. Like, look at United, they still haven't recovered from him. They still have those players who, like Lingard, Pogba, who just don't have the mentality to be in a team looking to win trophies. And that is partly down to Jose Mourinho. There are a few options there who may do good at Tottenham: Massimiliano Allegri, Eric Ten Hag, but neither of them are better options than Mauricio Pochettino, and that's just the way it is. Look, that's all I have time for in this video today. If you have enjoyed it, please don't forget to give it a big thumbs up, and make sure to leave your comments your opinions in the comments below. I want to hear from you and kind of your thoughts on the game yesterday, the VAR decision, but mainly Mauricio Pochettino and going forward. As I said, please don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching.